He loved her in silence, while helping the man she chose. Every opportunity that changed that man's life came from the one person who should have wanted him to fail. Zara never knew. But the night she finally found out, nothing between them stayed the same. She had never once needed saving. That was the first thing Nathaniel Ashford noticed about Zara Collins. And the thing that undid him completely. It was a Tuesday in October when she walked into the 43rd floor of Ashford Capital Group for her first day as senior strategy analyst. Nathaniel stood at the window with his coffee. A man of 35, a billionaire twice over, accustomed to knowing exactly what he wanted and how to remain unmoved by anything he couldn't have. Then someone knocked on his open door. Zara Collins was 27. Deep brown skin, natural hair pinned in a crown, burgundy blazer, cream blouse, leather portfolio under one arm, and an expression that said she had prepared for this moment, was not afraid of it, and would not be made to feel small inside it. Her eyes met his without hesitation. "Mr. Ashford, I'm Zara Collins. I start today." She extended her hand. "I wanted to introduce myself before the onboarding circus begins." He shook it, said only, "Welcome to the team, Miss Collins." She nodded once, smiled briefly, and left. Nathaniel turned back to the window. The merger he'd been losing sleep over suddenly felt less urgent. He told himself it was nothing. But something had shifted, quiet and irrevocable, like a door opening in a house he'd thought was empty. Everything Nathaniel Ashford did was deliberate, including the way he loved Zara Collins in silence, from a careful, respectful distance. He noticed she was sometimes talked over in meetings by men who were louder and less capable, so he began calling on her by name, specifically, before anyone else could fill the air. He noticed which projects set her eyes alight, and those were the ones he assigned to her. The promotions she earned, every single one. He was careful about that. He would not diminish her by handing her things she hadn't fought for. He simply made sure the doors were unlocked when she arrived at them. He also knew about Darius, her fiancé. Not because he asked. She mentions him naturally to her close friends at work, a proud smile attached to a name. Nathaniel noted it the way he noted everything, quietly, and without letting it show. What surprised him was what his own due diligence revealed. He ran background assessments on everyone in his inner circle's orbit, a precaution born of years in a world where leverage was currency. Darius Okafor was mid-level. Decent instincts, inconsistent follow-through. Not remarkable. But he was Zara's. So Nathaniel made him his quiet concern. When a partnership opportunity arose between Ashford Capital and Darius's firm, Nathaniel directed it without Zara's knowledge. When Darius's name appeared on a promotion shortlist, his managers were slow to advance. A single word from the right person accelerated it. He did none of it for Darius. He did all of it because Zara came in on Monday mornings, carrying the brightness of a woman who felt secure at home. And he had decided her peace mattered more than his feelings about the man providing it. He loved her enough to help the man she loved. He never told her. He considered that the most honest thing he had ever done. The Geneva Financial Leadership Summit was scheduled to last for 11 weeks. Nathaniel needed his best mind in the room, so he asked Zara directly. She came back Monday with a yes. "Darius and I talked it through," she said. "He's proud. He understands." The summit was indeed extraordinary. Zara Collins in her element was something to witness. She commanded every panel she sat on. She renegotiated a partnership structure that Nathaniel's own legal team had accepted as final. She did it quietly, over dinner, with the calm certainty of someone who had done her homework and knew it. They fell into an easy professional rhythm. Long working dinners, early mornings with coffee and strategy documents spread across hotel tables, occasional laughter at the absurdity of it all. Nothing happened. Nothing was ever going to happen. But 6,000 miles away, Darius was listening to other voices. It started with a comment from a friend, the kind of friend who smiles while he plants seeds of rot. 11 weeks in hotels with that man. You really good with that? Then another. Then a cousin who'd never liked Zara. Then the silence of unanswered calls at odd hours. Time zones Darius had stopped trying to calculate. Insecurity is not always loud. Sometimes it moves at night. And by the time you realize what it has done, the damage is already finished. On a Thursday in week 5, Darius met a woman named Kezia. One mistake became another. By week 8, she was telling him she was pregnant. He convinced himself this was Zara's fault. Convinced himself so completely that by the time Zara came home, glowing from the work, full of stories she couldn't wait to tell him, he was already holding his lie like a shield. She found out on a Thursday. The universe, Zara would later think, had a particular cruelty for Thursdays. Kezia had sent a message to a number she didn't know was Zara's work phone. The one Darius had borrowed once. A single message. An ultrasound. 12 weeks. Zara sat very still for a long time. Then she called Darius. He came. And because his guilt was dressed as anger. Because small men turn their shame outward. He walked into her apartment and accused her. Before she could say a word, that everyone knew about her and Nathaniel. That 11 weeks in Geneva was not a conference. It was a choice. The accusation landed like a slap. "Show me one thing," she said. Her hands were shaking. One message. One piece of evidence. One anything. She pressed her palm to her sternum. "You can't. Because there is nothing. You broke us. You did this. And now you're standing in my home trying to make me carry it." Something passed across his face. The flicker of a man who has gone too far and cannot find his way back. Then her vision blurred. The room tilted. A pressure behind her eyes so sudden and enormous, she reached for the counter and missed it. She was on the floor before she understood what was happening. Hypertensive crisis. That was what the hospital called it. Darius sat in the waiting room for 40 minutes. Then he left. Left a woman he had promised to love, alone in an emergency room, because staying would have required accountability. He texted an hour later, "I think it's better if we take space." Zara read it from her hospital bed, IV in her arm, and felt nothing. Which was, she realized, its own kind of answer. You do not feel nothing about losing something that was real. She was alone for exactly 2 hours. Then Nathaniel Ashford walked through the door. He did not make it a production. He sat beside her. He had come straight from a board meeting, still in his suit, and he brought 2 cups of decent coffee, because he knew hospital coffee was unconscionable. He handed her one. She took it, surprised he knew she was here, but more surprised he came. "How did you—" "Don't ask. I always know about my important employees," he said. "Important?" She couldn't help but smile. "You did great at Geneva. You earned the word." He smiled back. "You also don't have to explain anything about why you're here." "Good," she said. "Because I don't have the energy." He stayed until she was discharged, arranged her prescriptions, drove her home himself, and walked her to her door. He only said, "Call if you need anything." No conditions attached. In the weeks that followed, he restructured her workload without comment, sent meals under the company name, checked in by text in ways that were easy to answer with a single word. He never asked about Darius. He never inserted himself into the wound. He was simply, steadily, there. Zara, when alone, couldn't help but think of Darius's betrayal. She was hurt, but more than that, she was angry. Angry at him, but more angry at herself for letting her heart cling to him. He is not worth an ounce of her affection. 1 month. That was all the time that had passed. The wound was not healed. It was not even close to healed. She had gone back to work because work was the only place she made complete sense to herself. She had smiled at colleagues, delivered presentations, said, "I'm fine," so many times it had become a nervous tic. She was not fine. And on this particular Friday evening, alone, with her ex-fiancé's last text still sitting in her phone like a splinter she couldn't reach, the anger curdled into something that felt dangerously like a plan. She went to Nathaniel's office at 7:30. Black dress. Floor cleared. A plan that made a kind of bitter sense in the logic of her fury. Take the one thing Darius believed she'd already given away. Make it real. On her own terms. Nathaniel looked up from his desk. Something in his expression shifted. Not with desire, though she saw that too. Briefly and honestly, but with quiet, careful attention. "Zara." He said her name the way he always did. Like it meant something. "Close the door if you want." She closed it and crossed the room. She said without preamble what she had come to say. That she knew he wanted her, that she was here, that she was done pretending the air between them was only professional. He listened to all of it. Then he was quiet for a long moment. "Come sit down," he said. She sat across from him, and he looked at her the way no one had looked at her in a long time. With full, uncomplicated attention. Not the attention of a man calculating his advantage. The attention of a man thinking carefully about someone he cared for. "I'm not going to do this," he said. His voice was gentle, entirely certain. "Not tonight." She felt heat rise in her face. "Nathaniel, you're angry. You have every right to be. But you don't want me right now, Zara. You want to win something, and I will not be the weapon you use to take something back." "You don't know what I want," she said. "I know you well enough." He held her gaze. "And I know that if I let you do this tonight, you will wake up tomorrow and feel worse. Not because of me, but because you will have handed your pain to someone who deserved it as a gift and made it a transaction." The room was very quiet. "I have felt things for you," he said, "that I have never once acted on because you were not mine to act on. And I will not start now. Not like this." He held her gaze. "You deserve better than tonight's version of this." And honestly, the faintest honesty crossed his face. "So do I." She had come to seduce a man and been met, instead, with someone who refused to let her diminish herself. She had never been refused by someone refusing out of love. She left without another word, sat in her car for 20 minutes, and felt something shift in her chest. Slow, tectonic, permanent. Something that had nothing to do with Darius at all. What happened to Darius Okafor was not cruelty. It was consequence. Nathaniel Ashford did not announce a campaign. He simply stopped. The referrals that had quietly fed Darius's firm. Withdrawn. The invisible word that had smoothed his career. Silent. The scaffolding Darius had never known existed. Gone. Dismantled with the same quiet efficiency with which it had been built. Darius didn't understand it at first. Contacts grew unavailable. The right rooms had, without announcement, locked their doors. His boss started seeing inefficiency and giving queries. Then he ultimately lost his job. This was the reason Kezia told him the truth, because he is now a loser. The pregnancy had miscarried weeks ago. She had delayed telling him because she needed to understand what kind of man he was. When she did, she left quietly, without drama. He had destroyed a woman who had never betrayed him, for a relationship built on fear, and a baby that had never been born. He sat with that for a long time. Then, because his understanding of love had always been transactional, he decided the solution was to go get Zara back. He came to her office on a Wednesday. Not her apartment. Her office. Which was, in its own way, the most telling thing about him. Even his apologies had an audience in mind. Zara sent him to the small conference room. He looked diminished. Not physically, but the particular brightness of a man who believes the world is arranging itself in his favor had gone out of him. He spoke for several minutes. He had lost everything. He knew he'd been wrong. Kezia was gone. The pregnancy had never been real. He was asking, begging, for another chance. "I'm going to need you to leave now, Darius," she said. Not unkindly. Simply finished. She took the parking garage elevator down 40 minutes later, keys in hand, head clear the way a person's head is clear after saying an honest thing and meaning it. Darius was leaning against the pillar beside her car. "Just 5 minutes," he said. "You had your 5 minutes upstairs. This is trespassing. What we had was real. You can't tell me it wasn't real." "It was real," she said. "And you threw it away." Both things are true at the same time. The elevator behind her opened. Nathaniel Ashford stepped out. Jacket on. Keys in hand. He had seen Darius's name on the visitor log. He read the geometry of the situation in one glance. Zara, composed. Darius, too close. He walked to her side with the naturalness of long habit. "Ready, love?" he said pleasantly, not looking at Darius. Zara felt clarity rise from somewhere below strategy. She looked at Darius one last time. "Then yes, babe." Nathaniel's hand found the small of her back. Light, unhurried, entirely sure of itself. And they moved toward his car. Darius's voice came from behind them. "Who is that?" Neither of them answered. Neither of them needed to. In the car, she glanced at him. "You were already down here. I come to the garage every Wednesday around this time." He kept his eyes on the road. "Do you?" "The exit flow is better on Wednesdays." "I bet it is." She looked at him and smiled. "Nathaniel." He's following us." In the rearview mirror, Darius's car had pulled out 2 lengths behind. Nathaniel said, "Come to my place." Let him follow. Let him arrive at the conclusion. A beat. "You'll have the guest room. I'll have my conscience. It'll be very boring and extremely dignified." Despite everything, she laughed. "Fine," she said. Drive. His apartment was exactly what she would have imagined, and nothing like what she expected. Spare, warm, serious. Bookshelves that were actually used. A view of the river that was frankly unfair in its beauty. He opened Burgundy without ceremony. They sat and talked the way they had talked in Geneva. Easily, about real things. She had 2 glasses. Then a third. And somewhere in the loosening warmth of the wine and the evening, Zara Collins stopped editing herself. "I think about what you said. That night in your office." She turned the glass in her hand, not looking at him yet. "Which part?" "The part where you said you felt things. And never acted on them." Now she looked up. "Is that still true?" He held her gaze and said nothing for a long moment. "Yes." "Then why?" She gave a short laugh. At herself. "You love me. I think you actually love me. And you have just been waiting. Like some patient, impossible person while I was—" "Zara. Don't tell me I've had too much wine." She spurted. "You've had too much wine." He looked into her eyes. "And I'm still not wrong." Something in his face. The controlled, considered face she had read across boardroom tables for 2 years shifted. Just slightly. Just enough. No, you're not wrong. How long? She asked, curious. Since you walked into my office and introduced yourself before anyone told you to. That was 2 years ago. She stared at him. Yes. You helped Darius, didn't you? The accounts. The promotion. That was you. You came in on Monday mornings like someone who felt safe with who she's with. I wasn't going to take that from you. A pause. He didn't look away. You built up the man you were in love with me about. I built up the man you loved. There's a difference. It wasn't about him. She was quiet for a long time. The wine sat forgotten between them. That might be the most devastating thing anyone has ever told me. I'm sorry. Don't be. Her voice was softer now. Something opening in it. I've been looked at by men like I was something to be acquired. Something to win or display. She pressed her lips together. You looked at me like I was just a person you genuinely couldn't stop thinking about. And I didn't know what to do with that. So I called it professionalism and kept moving. You were someone else's. I wasn't going to complicate that. And now? He crossed the room, unhurried. No theater. He sat beside her on the couch. Close, but not claiming anything. Just present, the way he always was. Now I'm terrified. You're terrified? She blinked. In 2 years, she had never once heard him use that word. I have wanted this conversation and dreaded it in equal measure for 24 months. Because as long as it stayed contained, professional, mine alone, I couldn't lose it. And now it's outside the container. Zara finished for him. Now it's outside the container, he affirmed. They sat with that. The weight of 2 years in the air between them. Finally given a name. I'm telling you that I have been slow and stubborn and needed to be broken open to see something that was standing right in front of me. What are you going to do with that? He looked at her and smiled slowly. Not the boardroom version. A real one. Tonight? I'm going to get you a glass of water, order food, and let you sleep in the guest room. Because I refuse to let this begin any way we have to explain away tomorrow. But tomorrow I'd like to take you somewhere that isn't work, and talk about what this is. You are the most frustrating man I have ever met. I know. You'll get used to it. He stood to get the water. She laughed. A real one, surprised out of her. And in the sound of it, something that had been held very tightly for a very long time finally let go. Tomorrow came quietly, the way real things do. She woke in a room that smelled of cedar and clean linen, with the river light coming through sheer curtains. She lay still and took inventory of herself. Her thoughts, her feelings, the strange, grounded calm that occupied the space where anxiety usually lived. She felt like herself. A version of herself she had been missing. Nathaniel was in the kitchen. He had made eggs and decent toast and coffee. They sat at his kitchen table as the city woke and talked. Plainly, carefully, honestly. She told him she didn't want to rush. He said he had no interest in rushing. Patience did not frighten him. She told him she needed to know nothing between them would affect what she'd built professionally. He said. What she'd built was entirely hers. She told him she was still in places, bruised. He said he knew, and wasn't in a hurry for the bruises to disappear, only for her to know she didn't have to pretend they weren't there. I don't know exactly what I feel yet, she said, except that I want to find out. That's enough, he said. That's more than enough. They began the way things that are meant to last usually begin. Slowly, without announcements, with small accumulated moments. Sunday walks along the river, conversations that started about work and became something else. The gradual discovery that the ease they'd always felt in each other's company did not diminish with closeness, but deepened into something richer. She learned to receive care without bracing against it. He learned that the greatest gift she could give him was her actual, unedited self. Not the polished, professional armor she wore so well, but the woman underneath it, who was sharp and funny, and occasionally infuriating, and entirely, irreducibly real. He proposed on a Tuesday, which surprised her. She'd always imagined grand gestures happened on weekends, in restaurants with good lighting and a violinist lurking somewhere. Instead, it was a Tuesday evening, ordinary in every respect. She was at his kitchen counter in socks and one of his shirts, reading a brief glass of wine beside her. He came in from the study, sat across from her, and slid a small box along the marble without preamble. Like he was passing her a pen. "I've been carrying that for 6 weeks," he said, with the particular composure of a man who is not as composed as he looks. "I kept waiting for the right moment. And then I realized that every moment with you feels like the right moment. So I've been waiting for something that was already here." She opened the box. The ring was extraordinary. Understated and extraordinary, which was, she thought, exactly him. "Nathaniel Ashford," she said. "Are you nervous right now?" "Profoundly," he said. She laughed. She reached across the counter and took his face in both hands and said yes. "Obviously yes. Since approximately that night on your couch when I realized you were the most aggravating, principled, patient man I'd ever met. And I didn't want to spend another day not knowing what this was." He exhaled. A sound she had never heard from him before, something released from a very long way down. And for the first time in the 2 years she had known him, Nathaniel Ashford looked entirely, completely undone. She thought it was the finest thing she had ever seen. 10 months later, she was enormous. Gloriously, unmistakably enormous. 31 weeks of evidence that the universe had, in its own circuitous way, decided to be generous. They've gotten married 2 months after the proposal because she couldn't wait any longer. Nathaniel Ashford shouldn't wait any longer, and she definitely wanted to be held by him. Now, she lay on her side with one hand resting on the curve of her stomach, feeling the small interior movements that had become the particular rhythm of her days. Nathaniel was already awake. He was always awake first now. Something protective had come over him in recent months, that manifested as early rising and elaborate breakfasts she pretended to find unnecessary, and ate entirely. He was watching her with the expression she knew completely now. That full, quiet, ungrasping attention that had undone her the first time she understood what it meant. "Good morning," he said. "Good morning," she said. "Stop watching me sleep. I'm watching you wake up." "It's different." She reached over and put his hand on her stomach. They lay in the river light without speaking, as the city outside woke to another ordinary day entirely unaware of the extraordinary thing it contained. She thought briefly of the woman she'd been. The one who had walked into his office needing no one, who had gone to Geneva and come home to a betrayal and an emergency room, and the radical, unwanted discovery that she was not, after all, invincible. She was grateful for all of it, even the hard parts. Especially the hard parts. "Nathaniel. Thank you for waiting." He pressed a kiss to her temple. Unhurried, certain, exactly like him. "You were worth every day," he said.